Hey, well, welcome, Eastern Hills. Good to see you guys. My name is Dustin, and I'm so excited to get to share with you guys today. I'm the connections pastor here, and I've been on staff for about 5 years. And we have had an awesome run this summer talking about movies that have kind of stood the test of time. Some of them are newer that have just been amazing. And we're looking at the ways that those stories intersect with the Bible and with the story of Jesus. And so there is probably somebody in this room who is newer, or maybe you haven't been back this summer for one of these series and you're like, movies at church? Like I thought who's in charge here? Like, what's going on? Listen, there's a quote from J.R.R. Tolkien, who wrote Lord of the Rings, and he says this: the Gospels contain a fairy story, or a story of a larger kind that embraces all the essence of fairy stories. And when he says fairy stories, he's talking about myths and fables and books, and he's not saying that the gospel isn't true or isn't real or that it's a myth. He's saying that all the stories we tell, whether it's around a campfire or in a book or in our time now watching a movie or watching a show on Disney Plus, they point in some way or another to the story, the ultimate story of Jesus and what he did in the world when he came down as a human and died for each and every one of us. And so what we're looking at in these stories is actually the ways that they line up with the story of God, and maybe some of the ways that they show us some of the dark sides, some of the things that don't line up with the story of God. So hopefully that's clear. We've had a good run of some awesome movies so far, and we've got one more next week, but we're gonna jump in just a second. But before we do, I wanna pray for us. Jesus, thank you so much for this amazing community of people. I pray that today you would give each and every one of us in this room or watching online a deeper connection to you. Help us follow you better, become better disciples of you. Pray that you'd speak through me, use my words, and connect to the hearts of everyone listening today. We love you, amen. All right, so they gave me Jurassic Park to talk about, and some of you guys are like, I love Jurassic Park, great movie series, so awesome. Listen, all right, I have a little bit of trauma with Jurassic Park. So when I was younger, when I was a kid, me and my siblings went to my grandparents' house, and they, not me, I would never lie, they convinced my grandparents that we were allowed to watch this movie. Like, oh, we watch it all the time at home, it's fine. So we watched it, we did not. We watched this movie, and I had nightmares for months. Like I was like afraid to go to the scene where he eats the guy on the toilet, the T-Rex does. I was like afraid to go to the bathroom. My parents were like, what's got wrong? Like it took me like a month to finally fess up to them what I had done. And I was like, I'm scared of the dinosaurs. You understand, you know how it is. So that's why we're watching Raya and the Last Dragon on Wednesday, so nobody else gets traumatized. Be more fun. If you haven't seen the movie, I'm gonna give you a quick summary of it to kind of catch you up, because we're gonna be talking about kind of a couple of different points in the plot. Basically this old guy billionaire, John Hammond, he learns how to clone dinosaurs. So he makes all these dinosaurs in this amazing park, and he invites some paleontologists and Jeff Goldblum for some reason out to the park, and he says, hey, I need your approval. Yeah, I need your approval on this so that my investors don't back out. All right, so he sends them off into the park with his grandkids for a tour. Meanwhile, he's in the control room with his tech guy, who he doesn't know is gonna betray him and steal some of the secrets for these dinosaurs and sell them off. So the guy, Dennis Nedry is his name, he turns the power to the park off, he steals the dinosaur embryo and drives his Jeep off a cliff for some reason, and then gets eaten by one of the dinosaurs out in the park. Meanwhile, the T-Rex gets out. It eats a lawyer, almost eats Jeff Goldblum, but they get away just in time. John Hammond sitting in his office eating some ice cream, talking about flea circuses, because he's not getting chased by the T-Rex. Later on, the raptors get out, they eat some people, and then Ellie Sattler kind of saves the day by turning the power back on and electrocuting one of the grandkids, but don't worry, he's okay. And then they all run away from the raptors until finally the T-Rex shows up and eats them, but not the people, just the raptors. So there you go. Now you're caught up. If you haven't seen the movie, if you have seen the movie, hopefully that's familiar to you. It's a fun movie. It holds up pretty well. Maybe some of the CGI is a little, funny, but overall, it's still a good movie to watch. I watched it in preparation for this, and I am proud deeply to say that I did not have a single nightmare about it. So that's development in my character, I think. You could cheer if you want. No, it's fine. I'm trying, thank you. The book that we're going to look at today, we're going to look at a book in the Old Testament that I love, one of my favorite books. It's Ecclesiastes. And it's in this part of the Old Testament that's like poetry and wisdom and all this stuff. And so the person writing this book is writing it from the perspective, they're a king in Israel. They have all this power, all this money, all this stuff that anyone could ever want. And they're reflecting back on this life that they've lived. And they're talking about what their experience is and where they've found or haven't found meaning in life. And this is how the story starts. It's kind of like the opening scene of Jurassic Park where one of the park workers gets eaten by a raptor. It's a little ominous, all right? So bear with me. Here's what he says. Vanity of vanities, says the preacher. That's what he's calling himself, the preacher, but it's this poet who's writing this book. Vanity of vanities, all is vanity. What does a man gain by all the toil at which he toils under the sun? A generation goes and a generation comes, and the earth remains forever. He's saying life is vanity. Life is meaningless. Life has no end goal. You can reach for it, and in this case, when he says vanity, there's a couple different things that word can mean. In this case, he's talking about a smoke or a vapor. You can try and grab it, you can try and hold it, you can try and catch it, but it's always just out of your grasp, and before you even realize it's there, it's gone. A generation goes, a generation comes. At the end, we all die. So no matter how much you've built up, no matter how much you've got in your life, no matter how much you've made, eventually, you're gonna leave this earth, and when you do, you can't take any of it with you. And so the whole book, we're gonna kind of explore different aspects of this vanity, what it means to try and find meaning in life and recognize at some point that you just can't hold on to it. And this can be kind of a hard thing for us as Christians to hear. We like to wrap up these kinds of messages with a bow and hope and say, yep, everything's gonna be good and God's working through all that stuff. And in this book of Ecclesiastes, we don't find that. There is some very deep honesty and reality of the way that the world can be harsh and unyielding, and the things in our life that we cling to or think are important or try and control and build up can let us down and fall apart before we even realize it. And if you're not a Christian, maybe you're like, yeah, I get it, like I'm already there. If you're just checking things out here at Eastern Hills, this is a normal conversation for you, but if you're a Christian, some of these can be a little hard, and I just want you to bear with me today. I think there's some value, some depth of understanding that's important and helpful for us as we walk through life, to be able to acknowledge the things that are important and the things that aren't. And this way of thinking kind of breaks down the stuff that we think are important, chasing the wind of self-indulgence and sex and money and power, or even being a good person. They just don't matter. Whether you have a big 401k, or you get up early in the morning and go exercise, or you're a size 0, or you have a Pinterest-worthy house, or you get perfect grades and get into the school you want, or your kids are happy and successful, cancer doesn't care. If you're lazy, if you're hardworking, the same thing happens to everyone. Someone in the back is like, is he ever gonna talk about the dinosaurs again? I thought this was about Jurassic Park. The theme of the movie of Jurassic Park is that the characters are trying to play God by creating things that they can't control. And they build up all this stuff, and in the end, they have to run away and leave all the work that they created behind them. And the writer of Ecclesiastes is kind of saying the same thing. Hey, build up all you want, but by the end, it's all gonna be gone. You don't get to keep any of it. There's this guy in the movie, his name's John Hammond. He is this kind of backer of the whole project. He created it. He's excited about this park. He wants to give people this amazing experience. And something he says throughout the whole first half of the movie is, we spared no expense. He's talking about his technology. We spared no expense. He's talking about the food they have there. We spared no expense. These cool cars they have, we spared no expense. All of the stuff in the park is built to create this amazing, one-of-a-kind experience that no one's ever seen before. And he's like, we did all we could. We put all of our money, all of our effort, all of it into this one perfect experience. And for us, as we read that introduction to Ecclesiastes, we might think, well, maybe that's kind of the point of life. Like, if life is vanity, then maybe what I should do is just enjoy it as much as I can. Get all of the experiences out of life I can possibly get. Buy the nicest stuff, get a good car, get a good phone, get some cool technology, go on a fun trip. And the author of Ecclesiastes goes on in chapter 2, and he shares for a better part of the chapter about all the things he's accomplished and done in his life. All the experiences he's got to have. He's the king. He has anything he wants, any woman he wants. He has servants that wait on him hand and foot. He has access to wealth and power that nobody else has. He can go anywhere he wants. He's built these gardens and these castles and these things. And he gets to the end of this long list of all the stuff. He's saying, no one in the world has more than me, has access to more than me. And he gets to the end of this section, and this is what he says in chapter 2. Whatever my eyes desired, I did not keep from them. I kept my heart from no pleasure, for my heart found pleasure in all my toil. There's some satisfaction in the work, and this was the reward for my toil. But he goes on, then I considered all my hands had done, the toil I had expended in doing it, and behold, it was all vanity, a striving after the wind, and there was nothing to be gained under the sun. See, life is vanity. He's saying the best experiences in life are vanity. The pleasures that you can get out of life are vanity. Yeah, you can have them, you can go do it, and it's fun, and then it's gone. And then at the end of his life, he's looking ahead and saying, what was the point of all of it? Why did I bother going to all those places? Your family trip to France, vanity. That boat you want, vanity. A Tesla, super cool, vanity. Yeah, it's good. It's good to have those experiences. It's fun in the moment, but it's not bringing deep, meaningful, satisfying life. So if it's not pleasure, if it's not about what we have or what we get to experience, maybe it's about what we know. That might be it for some of us. We're like, okay, well, if I can grow and become a better person, maybe that's the answer. There's a character in the movie named Robert Muldoon, who's kind of this guy that is the park ranger, and he is keeping kind of tabs on all the dinosaurs, and he's telling them the whole movie, watch out for the raptors. The raptors are the smartest dinosaur. They're the most dangerous. They're the fastest. Do not let them out. In fact, you shouldn't even have them on the island because they're so dangerous. You should have made, like, there's some flying dinosaur. Anything else would have been better than these raptors. That, like, why'd you bring them here? And at the end of the movie, after the raptors get out, and he kind of has this heroic moment of helping them turn the power back on, he gets snuck up on by one of the raptors. And just before he gets attacked by the raptor, he just looks over at it and just says, clever girl. And maybe you feel like if you could just be the cleverest, if you could just be the wisest, if you could just be the most whole version of yourself, the best parent, the best spouse, the best student, the best employee, then you would be able to find some meaning in your life. And the writer of Ecclesiastes has the same line of thinking. He goes on in chapter 2, and he says, so I turned to consider wisdom and madness and folly. For what can the man who comes after the king? Only what has already been done. And I saw there's more to gain in wisdom than in folly. So there's more to gain in light than darkness. He's saying there has to be something. There has to be some value to wisdom. You look at the world and you can see it. Wisdom is better than folly. In this case, he says light is better than darkness. He's talking about righteousness, being a good person. He's saying being a good person has to be better than being a bad person, right? There has to be some benefit to you to doing the hard thing of growing wise, growing healthy, becoming the right kind of person. But he goes on and reflects more. The wise person has his eyes in his head, but the fool walks in darkness. And yet I perceived that the same event happens to all of them. And I said in my heart, what happens to the fool will happen to me also. Why then have I been so wise? He's saying it doesn't matter. If you're wise, if you're foolish, if you're smart, if you're not, if you work hard, if you don't work hard, if you become the right kind of person, you don't get to control what happens to you in your life. It doesn't change what can go on in the life around you. I'm kind of a student of self-improvement. I like to grow. I like to read and listen to podcasts and work on myself and push myself to grow. I've gone to counseling and I just want to understand myself and be a whole person. And earlier this year, my wife and I found out that we had a miscarriage. And in the moments of reflecting on that and realizing how much pain and grief we were feeling, I realized that no amount of spiritual growth books would have helped prepare me for this moment. That I had to face this grief and there was no way around it. I couldn't control it. I didn't have the decision in this situation. And that no matter how good of a person I was, it wouldn't have changed anything. Not the situation or my ability to handle it. And I wonder for you, if you have had these little glimpses in your life, you've lost someone, you were the best employee and you still lost the job. You're the best spouse and you worked so hard on yourself and your marriage still crumbled. You tried as hard as you could to be a good parent, and at the end of the day, your kids still walked out of your house disconnected from you. There's little glimpses of this vanity. It doesn't always take till the end of our life for us to realize how fleeting the things we cling to and think are important can be. And the writer goes on and finishes this section by saying, I said in my heart that this is also a vanity, that the same thing can happen to everyone. For of the wise as of the fool, there is no enduring remembrance, seeing that in the days to come, all will have been long forgotten, how the wise dies just like the fool. Life is vanity. With self-discovery, with self-improvement, with growth, at the end of the day, it can't do everything for you. And I have a hard truth for you, Eastern Hills, and that is no one will care about you or how good you were in 100 years. An example of parenting. Let's use that as kind of our example here. If you're a parent, you know how good of a parent you were. Maybe you were a good parent, maybe you had some struggles, but you know, you did it, you lived it. Your parents, you can think, okay, they were good parents, right? They worked hard to be good parents, or maybe they didn't, and you can at least know, okay, yeah, they weren't the best. Your grandparents, you have some idea. You're like, yeah, my parents said they were like this, but I didn't experience it firsthand. Your great-grandparents, maybe you have a couple of memories of them, but you certainly don't know how good of parents they were. Your great-great-great-grandparents, do you know their names? In 100 years, no one is going to remember your name, much less how good of a person you are, how generous you were, how kind you were to people. Even being a good, whole person, being the wisest you can be, will let you down in the end. So if it's not enjoying life and it's not self-improvement, maybe the way we find meaning and value in our lives is with impact, what we do for the people around us, the things we build. Maybe if I build a business that endures, maybe if I invest in my family to kind of move forward generationally with the stuff that we value and care about, maybe that's the thing that's gonna give me the meaningful life that I want, the impact I have on the people around me through what I do. Well, there's a really good scene in Jurassic Park. We're still talking about that, I promise. There's a really good scene in Jurassic Park where John Hammond's character is, I talked about it earlier, he's eating this ice cream and he's talking about this flea circus, and he's like, it was my first thing I ever made. I built this attraction and it was all fake and an illusion. But it was this cool, amazing thing that people would come and they'd say, oh, I can see the fleas in there, but I knew it was a trick. It was just a little mechanical trapeze or something, tricking them. And he gets to the end of this little story, and Ellie Sattler's sitting across from him, and she kind of looks over at him and she says, well, yeah, we just didn't realize how much power there was in the park, how much was really going on here. And he goes, yeah, but when we get control again, when we can just get control back. We made a mistake. We had some issues here. We didn't know what we were doing. We trusted this Dennis Nedry. We shouldn't have trusted him. There was too much automation. But when we get control back, then we'll be good. And he's clinging to this idea that there's this chance he has when we get control again. That he thought, I have control of this park. I have the chance to make something important. And the writer of Ecclesiastes kind of reaches the end of this section and throws his hands up a little bit. And he says, I hated all my toil in which I toil under the sun, seeing that I must leave it to the man who comes after me, and who knows whether he'll be wise or a fool, but he will be master of all for which I toiled and used my wisdom under the sun. This also is vanity. So I turned about and gave my heart up to despair over all the toil of my labors under the sun. No matter what I make, no matter what I create, no matter what I do to impact the people around me, somebody else is gonna come along after me and mess it up. And you know this is true in your life. If you think about working at a company for some time, and you have a manager who builds a system and they think it's the best way to do it, and then somebody else comes in and says, who did this? This is a mess, and they start it all over from scratch. You can build up the best company in the world, and then who knows who's the CEO is gonna be after you leave. You can pass on your wisdom to your kids, and they can go the complete opposite direction from you in the next generation. And your grandkids, you're like, what are you doing? That's not how you raise kids, but you don't get to control it. And the scene goes on, and part of me wanted to end the talk right here with kind of this hanging despair. That's how the book ends, but luckily for us, it's not how the story of Jesus ends. See, Ellie Sattler, the paleontologist, she's kind of like probably the most hero of the movie, of the people in the movie. She looks back across the table after he's done telling this story, and John Hammond saying, when we get control back, when I get another chance to try this. And she just said, you never had control. That was the illusion. That you thought you could control the stuff going on in this park. That, not the flea circus. The real illusion was that you ever really had control over this park. You never had control. And it doesn't really clear up the tension that we're feeling, but the writer of Ecclesiastes lands this book in a little bit of a different way that I want to read, and then I also want to compare it to something that Jesus says much later. We skipped a few chapters. Everything in between what we read and this really is just him going back and forth. Maybe this is important, maybe this is important, and not finding that meaning anywhere. He lands here. The end of the matter, all has been heard. Fear God and keep his commandments, for this is the whole duty of man. For God will bring every deed into judgment, with every secret thing, whether good or evil. This doesn't clear up everything, but it gives us an underlying hope. There's something here. And I think even the writer of Ecclesiastes didn't quite get it at the time. That the way they thought about God and life after you die and those kinds of things were not totally fleshed out yet. And so I think for him, he's saying, I don't know the answer, but I'm pretty sure the right thing to do is just follow God. And Jesus comes along quite a bit later, and he shares these words with his disciples. And in the book of Matthew, written by one of Jesus' followers, they're kind of keeping track of some of the things he said. This is a story that they recount that I just think is so helpful, and comparing it to and seeing how it fills in some of the stuff we just read in Ecclesiastes. So this is what Jesus said. Jesus told his disciples, if anyone would come after me, let him deny himself, take up his cross. That's the thing Jesus is gonna die on. He's saying, grab one of those, take up your cross and follow me. For whoever tries to save their life will lose it, but whoever loses his life for my sake will find it. Take your cross, follow me. For what will it profit a man if he gains the whole world and forfeits his soul? Or what shall a man give in return for his soul? For the Son of Man, that's Jesus, is going to come with his angels in glory of his Father, and he will repay each person according to what he was done. Does that last part sound a little familiar? Repay each person. It's kind of what the writer of Ecclesiastes was saying. He's like, God will know at the end. Jesus is saying, God will know at the end. But he offers us a trade. He offers us a different option. This can be a hard passage to read on any given day. We go, man, Jesus, you want me to die to myself? You want me to deny myself, follow you into death? Oh my gosh, that feels like a lot. But in light of Ecclesiastes, in light of thinking about the vanity of our lives, it sounds like a good deal. Life is vanity. Jesus is saying life is vanity, so you can't mess it up. Life is vanity. You can't mess it up. Jesus is offering us a trade. He says, hey, you've been working really hard. You've been trying to control it. You've been trying to create this little life for yourself over here. It's an illusion. You don't really have control. How about you trade me that control you feel like you have, and what I'll give you is deep, meaningful, satisfying life with me now and forever. Our short lives, our best efforts, our biggest accomplishments, money, stuff, time, all of it is vanity. So make the trade. When Jesus offers that life, take that deal. I had 3 goals in my life, in my 20s. To be a good husband, to be a good dad, and to be a good pastor. I barely got married before I was 30, so that one wasn't great. Like I mentioned earlier, we had a miscarriage this year, and so I don't even know what our family's gonna look like. And a couple of months ago, Phil, and who's our lead pastor, and he preaches most weekends if you've been here before. I've been friends with him for a long time, and he and my boss came to me and they sat down with me for a meeting and they said, listen, Dustin, we have a big project. We want you to do it, but we don't think you can. We don't think you're in a good spot mentally right now. We've seen kind of your work decline. We've seen kind of your attitude going down. It seems like you're not in a good spot with Jesus. And we want you to take a month away, do some intensive counseling before you come back. Get your head on straight and come back. And part of me felt in that moment appreciation and gratitude to my friends who cared about me enough to give me that space and to be that generous. And part of me just felt like an absolute failure. How did I get here? I've been doing this for 10 years. How did I end up in a place like this? Why do I have to take this time away? Do I really need a whole week of counseling? That just feels... Here's the thing. Jesus was never asking me to do any of those things that I was working so hard to do. He didn't sit me down and say, Dustin, you've got to be a perfect dad. Dustin, you've got to be a perfect husband. Dustin, you've got to do an amazing job as a pastor forever. Never make any mistakes. I put that weight on myself. I saw the things that I thought were important. Maybe you've done that before too. And you're thinking right now of some things you've been chasing, some things you've been working for, some things you've been letting just weigh you down. And Jesus is saying, hey, I never asked you to do that. There's one more passage in Matthew I want to read that I think just can give us some grace, some refreshment, some breath. The first time I read Ecclesiastes, I was in Montana, sitting on a lawn chair in the sun. It was a nice day. And you're like, that's a depressing book to read. And I got to the end of the book, and you know what I felt? Relief. I got to the end of the book, and I felt like, I can breathe. Because life's vanity, but I realized in that moment that I couldn't mess it up. There was no stakes. Jesus already took care of it. This is what he says in a different section in Matthew. Come to me, all who labor and are heavy laden, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you and learn from me. Learn from me, Jesus. For I am gentle and lowly in heart, and you will find rest for your souls. For my yoke is easy, and my burden is light. Life is vanity. We found that out in Ecclesiastes. Jesus is saying, so what are you worried about? Life is vanity. The stuff that you want to do, vanity. The stuff that you have, vanity. The person you're going to be, vanity. So take a breath. You don't have to carry all of that. Jesus is trading it with you. He's taking that and he's giving you an easy burden, following him, becoming more like him. That's all he's asking for you. A life of learning to be like Jesus, gentle, lowly at heart, full of rest for your soul. Following Jesus is not creating the perfect life. It's accepting the life you have and walking with him through it. That's what he wants for you. Somebody's asking, what do I do? How do I do that? I want to try it, but what does that even really mean in my actual life? Here's what it means. Go give something away. Call a friend who's in pain. Tell them you love them. Spend some time with your kids. Forgive somebody who absolutely does not deserve your forgiveness. Cut out some pointless activity you know is just going to be draining for you and your family. Spend some time praying, listening to what God might be telling you to do today. Pick one of those. That's what it means. Taking a step toward Jesus. Sitting outside on your patio and just appreciating the fact that you don't have to carry all of the burdens of the world. Thanks, Jesus, that I don't have to carry all of that stuff, that vanity. Not tomorrow, not someday, not when you're more mature. Today, right now. I'm gonna give you an opportunity in just a second to maybe do some of this stuff. And maybe this afternoon you think about it some more and you try something else and you're not gonna do it perfectly, and that's the point. You can't mess it up. Living in freedom from just feeling like you have to control everything. Listen, Jesus has it. He is the creator of all of it. He's so much bigger than the little flea circuses we're kind of creating for ourselves. He loves your kids. He cares about them more than you do. He loved your spouse before you even met them. He's working in the world. No matter how hard you work at your job, he's working harder. You're doing a good job already. You're following Jesus already. That's all he's asking of you. We're gonna sing this song right now, and what I'd love for you to do is to just take the first little part of the song and just stay in your seats and sit and listen, and as you feel kind of ready, you can stand up and sing. But reflect on the ways that you have tried to create a certain life for yourself. Reflect on the ways that you have chased this vanity, this wind, this smoke of life. And what kind of breath might you be able to take when you let go of some of that stuff and just say, Jesus, what do you want me to do right now? What does it look like to become a little bit more like you? Spend a little bit of time listening to you. Not to be a good person, not to be the best version of yourself, but just to be with Jesus and follow him and be more like him. I want to pray for us, and then the band is going to play, and I would love for you to just reflect on that before you stand up and sing whenever you're ready to. Jesus, thank you so much for this amazing deal you've given us. Our life is short. Our life is gone before we even know it. The stuff we want can be gone before we even have a chance to enjoy it. I pray that for each person in this room and each person watching online, you would give them a clear way forward to become more like you, to know you in a deeper way, and to release the pressure, the weight, and live in the freedom of following you. We love you. Thank you for creating us. Amen.